Okay, well, welcome. This morning we are with Dr. Spencer Clark, who's going to share some information with us about Essentialism. I want to have him introduce himself first, though, and tell you a little about who he is and what he does with the math program.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I'm an assistant professor in curriculum studies here at Kansas State, and this is my end of my first year here at Kansas State. So, and I teach curriculum, graduate courses in curriculum, and some social studies courses. That was my area of emphasis when I taught in schools. And for the MAT program, I will be teaching the action research class at the end of your program while you're student teaching and getting your portfolio ready. And so, yeah, it'll be a fun time. We'll all be working hard on many different things, and but this year went great, so I think it's good. I think students really appreciated the opportunity to do some research while they're doing 20 other things too. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's wonderful that you've had that first cohort go through, and you kind of know what to look for now, and you're going to really be able to support this new cohort going through, and it's exciting.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll be new and improved and really efficient this next semester or in the spring. So, yeah.
Excellent. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about essentialism in schools and what it looks like. As we know, this philosophy really focuses on that core content knowledge. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with it and what you've seen?
Sure. I started teaching in roughly 2001 in elementary classrooms and middle school classrooms in Kansas City, Missouri School District. And that's right when No Child Left Behind was coming out. And so it was kind of a big, there's a lot of pressure coming down and a lot of change in the curriculum going back to the basics. Essentially, it was a real push back to reading and math, and which at that point I was just in the middle school and elementary, and so it made sense. But then I started teaching. I taught 6 years high school social studies, and that had a huge difference on non-tested subjects. So if you probably don't know maybe a whole lot about NCLB, but it kind of emphasized testing and reading and math, and so that had a whole lot of implications for the arts and social studies and science. And science or social studies was labeled the low stakes testing area. So we took tests, but they didn't really matter towards anything. They didn't go towards accreditation or go towards funding, and so that was kind of like the last big push, I think, towards this idea of essentialism and back to the basics. And I think it seems to happen about every 15 to 20 years, and so we had one in 1984, I think, with Nation at Risk, and so maybe we're due again because of 2001. So, we usually kind of start out back to basics, and then we kind of graduate towards either like a social efficiency where we're really focused on preparing students for jobs, and we have this economic kind of really focus, which you can see with the recession in 2008, and we've kind of had a shift towards that with Common Core and career readiness, and so it's footed in essentialism, but it's really focused more on skills instead of content. I saw that was a question in the chapter. So I think that's Common Core is a really interesting one to kind of use in this example. And then there's also kind of the social emotional shift that happens too sometimes, and I think that's where we're at right now. Is we've kind of had the Common Core, and now we're seeing that we've disregarded this whole other part of the student by focusing on content so much. And so I think essentialism is a big part of our curriculum, right? And it's an important part of our curriculum. Students need reading and math, and they need the basics, but there's also this other part that we want, critical thinking, problem solving, and how do we connect those things. And so sometimes it's we need the essentialism, but how do we connect it to the other important stuff too, I think.
Exactly. So. And I think given the diversity in our schools now, the changing nature and demographics, we really need to think about that other part too, because the students aren't going to you're not going to meet their needs the same way. You can't just give them a textbook and say, okay, we're going to read the textbook and here's the answer.
Right.
You have to approach learning in different ways to meet the needs of your students. So there's different learning styles, different backgrounds, even the different languages students are going to bring to your classroom. So.
Yeah, I think that's where Theodore Sizer is really interesting. He's essentialist, but he really takes the instructional strategies, I think, to a different level. He's not the kind of the traditional essentialist, and so you saw in the video that his students were doing a lot of things, and they really do focus on thinking, and we all know that we all think about things in different ways. we know that different cultures do math in different ways, right? Even though we're taught, one or two ways. And so, I think essentialism, is a good starting block. It's kind of a good place to start in thinking and focus. But there's a lot more places to go with it than just kind of really focusing. I think that's what happens is that when we say back to the basics, everyone thinks that we just, focus really strictly on that. And I think it's much more than that. And I think that's where Sizer and E.D. Hirsch are really different. E.D. Hirsch is all about breadth, learning as much as we can about, little things about as many things as we can, whereas I think Sizer's more about depth, so really going in depth into core subjects, and I think that's a really important distinction to make.
Yeah, definitely. So even though they're in that same philosophy, they can still have very different approaches, which I think is critical.
Right,
point.
And I think that lends itself to diverse school settings too, is the ability to go more in depth allows for individuals to apply their own learning styles and problem solving and creative thinking to those things. So.
Yeah, definitely.
And make their own connections.
Yeah. So we can still see that in play in schools today, which I like. You still see this as relevant.
Right. Yeah, I think you'll always see essentialism somewhere in schools, right? Just because of the basic need for reading and writing and doing basic math just to survive and pay bills and do other things.
Exactly.
And so I think we always will see that. So
yeah. But I think too that we need to always remember that it goes beyond just testing the knowledge level of those core skills. It's looking at the whole student and the whole curriculum as, like you said, social studies, arts, those other areas are just as important. And an essentialist might not think that, but we need to think that well-rounded student are really approaching all the different areas.
Right, and some of the early essentialists really thought about it as like the 5 windows to the soul. So it was like reading, writing, math, arts, and so like really training like your soul to be a human being. And so some people call them humanist in some ways, right, too. And so I think that's really important to remember also, is that we are training a person. It's not just a set of skills and or a set of knowledge that we're just supposed to consume and spit back out and in a variety of ways. And I think we're seeing that again because a lot of the data in Kansas is showing that employers want students who can communicate, and they're not as concerned with academic knowledge as much as being able to use knowledge and communicate that knowledge. And I think it's and just having that social emotional ability to connect with people and so it's coming through in data that we're seeing from employers and schools and things like that. So.
Definitely. I know in Western Kansas we have a lot of our future employers saying we want future teachers who can communicate and work with students in meaningful ways, not just teach a class and drill and practice them and give them tests. We want them to be able to really interact and go beyond. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and so looking at the chapter that you provided, I think it's great because a lot of people would think of essentialism as just lecturing, resuscitation, and just really basic kind of teacher-centered instruction, but Socratic questioning was on there, and communication, so discussion, and those things are also important, which I think are often taken out of the mix when we're thinking about cramming as much content in students' minds as possible. We don't do a lot of activities that are make them a whole human being, and be able to contribute to society in more ways. And so there's that part of it too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on essentialism and contextualizing that a bit for us. I hope you've enjoyed this coffee talk and gotten a lot out of it. And you'll be seeing Dr. Clark here very soon.
In the spring,
In the spring. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.